Oh, good day, good afternoon, good morning, or good night, depends where you are. It's a pleasure to be here with Debbie Wiseman. She's our guest for today. And so we are part of the Musimagem festival going on this week. And I have also here João Batista Melo, one of the directors of Musimagem, that we both will ask Debbie some questions and get to know her better, get to know her work better. So, João, could you please give us an introduction on our guest?
Yes, good afternoon or good morning, I say. Uh, Today we are honored to receive one of the main British composers, Debbie Wiseman, that was born in London, received many awards for his works, and he wrote soundtracks for more than 100 movies, series, and today we will have the pleasure of have a conversation with Debbie Wiseman. Natalia, do you want to start the
I can
questions?
start. Yes. Well, I just want to let everybody know that you can also send your question here in the chat in the YouTube. So we will read to Debbie also. You can participate. You should, please do. Well, maybe I'll start with a question that perhaps we can relate, because as we know that still the music world and the cinema world are environments still dominated by men. So there are lots of, women are growing and doing wonderful projects and films and music. And I'm sure you are one of the most important composers. And you reached a point that you can work with many different directors. And I would like to know if you still find difficulties, or what are your experiences in that with that prisma, like looking at being a woman, a composer in this kind of environments.
Well, it's lovely to meet everybody, and thank you for inviting me to join your festival, and really happy to be here. And it's a privilege to talk to you all. Now, as far as being a female composer, you're right, there are still quite a few, not as many as men in the field, but there are many more now, and that's wonderful. And there are many more female musicians as well in the orchestras that play instruments that might have been previously dominated by men, like percussion or brass instruments, trumpets, trombones, double bass. Those sorts of instruments used to be predominantly played by men. Now, almost always you will find a female trumpet player or a female percussionist or trombonist. So, and female conductors as well. I conduct my own music, always have conducted, and now it's not unusual at all to see a female composer at the podium conducting their music or other people's music. So it's much more common, and I think many more women are now involved in writing, producing, playing, conducting, and it's not unusual anymore. So anybody, any female composer that's out there thinking, am I going to be able to do this? Am I going to be able to break through? Am I going to be able to have a career? The answer is, if you work hard and you're talented and you really want to do this, then being female is absolutely not an issue anymore. And you should just absolutely go for it if it's what you love doing.
Good. Debbie, in the festival concert this year was played the theme of one of the movies that have your music more known in Brazil. that is Father Brown, the series. Then I would like that you talk about this music. For example, Father Brown in British, in England, is in the 11th season, I think. This is many seasons. How is work for so long time for a project that have the same characters, the same plot? How was make the music to Father Brown?
Well, it's a really good question. I love working on Father Brown. You're right, it's had 11 seasons. But the great thing about it is that, yes, there are similar characters. Obviously, there's Father Brown and Lady Felicia and maybe some of the older characters that you might know, like Sid, and they've just brought in a new character called Mrs. Divine. Mrs. McCarthy. There's all these characters that play a part in the series, and they have themes. For every episode, there is a new murder or a new mystery. And so the music can stay fresh because what I do is I watch every episode like it's a new film. And yes, there are established themes that I use when the father is sleuthing or working out clues or trying to understand characters and trying to understand what's going on in the story and he's figuring out perhaps who might be the villain. I have themes for that. But the essence of Father Brown is the same, but each episode there's a new story. So it keeps it very fresh and it means I can write new themes for every episode, which I do. And there are new stories, new characters. And what I love doing sometimes is throwing the audience off the scent of who might be the villain by writing maybe very lyrical music for the person that I know is the baddie and the villain and throwing them off the scent. And then it's even more of a shock when they're found out to be the person that has committed the crime at the end. So it's such fun writing this music. You can see it on the screen here behind me. I'm just working on uh series 11. Series is it 11 or 12? I've lost count. There've been so many episodes. There's been about 130 episodes in total. But and there's another series for next year as well. So it's for me, it's been one of the most joyful projects to work on. There is an orchestra in every episode. So the producers decided right at the start this wasn't going to be an electronic score. I have the opportunity to write for 25 musicians in every episode. So I use strings and there's woodwind, there's a vibraphone, which is often Father Brown's key instrument, guitar, acoustic guitar, piano. So I have a lovely palette of orchestral colors to work with within the score. And that helps again keep it fresh and make sure that I find new colors and new themes and new melodies for each episode. And every episode is scored to picture as if it's a film. So I write every cue originally from scratch. People ask a lot of the time, oh, is there a sort of library of themes that you just use over and over again? No, it's not a library of themes. Every music cue is written and recorded from scratch. And every episode is different. So it is a real thrill to compose, and I'm so happy to hear that you enjoy the music. And I'm looking forward to working on the next 10 episodes, which are going to be arriving probably in the spring next year.
Nice.
And you were saying that you conduct also all the recordings, and how I mean, do you go over every recording? You go from the start, from composing, and you follow all the way to the end, to the
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so important to do that. So I write at the piano here, where I'm sitting is where I write, and I have my manuscript paper and the picture running, and I sketch everything out at the piano, quite old-fashioned with a manuscript paper and a pencil, and I do then put it onto computers and samples and prepare every single music cue for the directors and producers to come over and listen to. So I play everything in, whether it's a vibraphone or a flute or an oboe or a clarinet or percussion or sometimes it's guitar. Every instrument I orchestrate and play it into my computer sequencer program. Then the directors and the editors come over and the producers come over and they listen and they watch the episodes to picture with my kind of pretend orchestra. Then we talk about it and they might comment on it and they might say, could we have an extra music cue here? I think you're missing a trick here, or you're missing something here, or could we make it more dramatic? Or maybe we don't need music where you placed it. And we have a conversation and a dialogue about it. At that point, I make some changes and we talk about it. And then, usually about 3 weeks later, I go into the studio. We've been recording at Air Studios in London. And I go into the studio with 25 musicians, and every single musician has their own part to play. And we record every single music cue across a 4-hour session. And then I conduct it all. And everything is real. So there's no synthesizers at all. Everything you hear on screen is a real instrument. Unless there's something very spooky or mysterious, and then I might create something on a sample here, because it's not something maybe that you want from an orchestra. But all the tunes and the melodies you hear all played originally with the real instruments. And then we mix it. Once we record it, we mix it. Make sure the balance is right between all the instruments and make sure everybody's happy with everything. And then it gets sent off to the team that do the final mix, and they mix it in with dialogue and sound effects, and they create the final version that you hear on screen. And they are really, really talented. The team that mix Father Brown are really talented. So they make it, they make it sound great on screen. You can hear everything. You can hear the music. You can hear the dialogue. You can hear the sound effects. Often I find sometimes, in television music, it can go wrong, the mix stage. And sometimes you can't hear the music, or the music's too loud and it's overpowering what's going on the screen. The key is, and it's not down to the composer, and it's not the composer's fault if it goes wrong, but the key is that the balance is perfect, that you can hear everything. Same in movies. Everything has to be perfectly balanced. The music, the dialogue effects, you have to be able to hear everything without one thing overpowering the rest. And of course, the composer thinks about this as they're writing the score. So I'm thinking, oh, is there going to be a big sound effect here? In which case I must be a little bit more subtle and make sure the music doesn't conflict. Or if there's really important dialogue, I might think the music has to be maybe played by strings, because that doesn't get in the way as much as maybe a woodwind or a brass instrument, which attracts your ear more than just gentle strings or piano or whatever. So I make these choices as I'm writing, and that goes into the orchestration, which then goes on to the studio, and the musicians play it. So it's a long process. And I have about maybe 6 weeks on each episode. So it's sort of like 10 feature films, one after the other, when I'm working on the score. It's a big commitment, a lot of work, and it normally goes from between about April through to September.
Wow, amazing.
Amazing. Debbie, for my relationship with the soundtrack and with the movies was very important. An old style of genres, the disaster movie. The first soundtrack that I loved and that I bought the vinyl, the long play, was Airport of Alfred Newman, The Towering Inferno of John Williams, Earthquake of John Williams. This kind of music was very important for my relationship with the soundtracks. And you make a soundtrack for a disaster movie, a good disaster movie, Flood. That is
Well,
an impressive film.
Flood.
And I want to know how you work with Flood. That is a strong soundtrack, a strong music. How you found the way to make the soundtrack, the kind of music for
Well,
Flood?
Flood was a really exciting film to write the music for. And it was very fast. It was an occasion where the producers had already got a composer on board and they weren't happy with it and how it was going. And I got a call from the producers in a panic about 3 or 4 weeks, I think it was about 3 weeks before the music was had to be delivered for the film. So it was really, really fast. And they said to me, look, we want this music to be dramatic and a mixture of electronics and orchestra. We need it very, very fast. Do you think you can do it? And I said, well, let me see the film and let me see if it speaks to me and I can understand what you need and that I think I can do it. There's no point me saying, yes, yes, I can do it, if it then becomes something that it's just not practical. So I looked at it and I thought it was a great film. I thought it had lots of exciting moments and I wanted to write the music. So I then said to the producer, let me write just the main theme, the flood theme, which is quite relentless because the whole point of it was that the flood was a kind of character in the film and it was this relentless character. So I wrote this kind of dum 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 da 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 dum 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 da 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 kind of rhythm
Yes.
and pattern. And that was the key to it. And I said, look, I've got this idea for the flood theme. Come over. And they came over here where we are now to my music room. And I said, listen to this main theme. If you like it, then I think I can do it because we've only got 3 weeks and I haven't got a lot of time to try lots of other different ideas. If you don't like it, that's fine. No problem. You can find another composer that might be more in tune with what you're doing. So they all came over, had a listen to the main theme, and they heard it once. And I played them that big, that dramatic dum da 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 dum. And they said, okay, there were about 3 or 4 of them. And they said, well, we're now going to go and discuss it. And they went outside into my garden because it was a lovely summer's day. And I sat in my music room and they were out there for like 5-10 minutes discussing it. And I was thinking, I'm not sure this is going to go very well. I think they're going to come back and say that they don't like it. And they came back and then they said, we like it. And it was like, oh, great. Okay, fantastic. It was like 10 minutes to discuss one theme, but we like it. So it started the ball rolling. I felt really happy that they liked it and I was able to continue. And I wrote the rest of the music really, really quickly. And one of the really thrills of that score was using a beautiful soprano called Hayley Westenra, who sings a soprano line because although it had that relentless rhythmic pattern going on, there was also the aftermath of the flood, what happens afterwards. And there's like the calm after the storm. And I wanted to write something that was they wanted something almost beautiful and hymn-like at the end, at the second part of the film. And I wrote this piece which Hayley Westenra sings, and it has a lovely kind of gentle melody. And she sung it so beautifully, and it was a really lovely thing to write. And it was nice because it was in such contrast to the rhythmic music in the film. And so it had lots of variation. It had the big moments, the dramatic moments, which mixed electronics with orchestra, but also the more gentle, subdued, more beautiful, I suppose, beautiful in terms of what I was trying to achieve with the vocal and the strings and lyrical music. So it had a lot of variety and a lot of
I love
opportunity.
this music. And I want to make another question. Could I, Natalia? Uh, the festival is about soundtracks, is about music for movies, series, games. But I want to make a question about something that appears in many movies, but your work wasn't for a movie. The King's Coronation. Uh, how was the experience? In the story of the music, there are classics uh, related to kings, the music of Handel. Uh, how was the process and how was your feelings composing to a coronation of a king?
Well, it was such an honor, first of all, to be asked, a real privilege to be asked to write the two gospel alleluias for the King's coronation. It started with both of them, both alleluias being written for the Westminster Abbey Choir and and an organ. So I was given the text for the two alleluias from the two psalms, and the king asked for them both to be written for the Westminster Abbey Choir and the organ. So just before this, sort of more or less this time last year, actually, I was busy writing those pieces. And then just after Christmas, I had a message from Andrew Singer, who was the master of the choristers that you saw conducting everybody. And he said the king would really love to have a gospel choir at the coronation. How would you consider writing the second Alleluia, rearranging it, because I'd already written it, rearranging it for a gospel choir? And I'd already written the first one, and the second one had to be linked thematically. And I thought, yes, it's going to be okay. So I said, yes, I'd be very happy to do this. And I looked at the music, and just amazingly, and it was luck, the music had a kind of bounce to it. It was in the time signature 6/8, and it went down ba 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 da 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 da. That was the kind of rhythm, and it had this sort of bounce to it, which was lucky because it lent itself to the gospel choir's version of the Alleluia, which also had this kind of bounce. And it meant, as you probably saw them kind of slightly swaying along to the music when they were performing it. And that was because it was in 6/8, and it gave them the chance to sort of have a little movement alongside the piece. So I rearranged it for the gospel choir. They came over, they were 8 singers, and they came over and we rehearsed in my house. And I taught them the music because the Westminster Abbey Choir choristers, they read music all the time. They just learnt it from the score. But the gospel choir needed a little bit more time to get to learn the music, learn their individual lines, which they did over at my house. And then they went away and practiced for so many days beforehand to make sure that they were completely ready for the big day. And they came out and they delivered it, and I was so proud of them. They did such a great job, and it was thrilling to hear. So in the end, you heard the gospel Alleluia sung by the gospel straight after you'd heard that the gospel was in the middle, and then you heard the two Alleluias either side. And it was such a thrill. I was in Westminster Abbey on the day listening to it, and it was completely magical. A day. I think there were 12 composers contributing to various different parts of the service, either before the service or during the service, and everybody felt the same, that it was a day they would never forget.
Nice.
Wow. Can you imagine how much emotion was involved also in it?
Yes.
And maybe we go a little back to ask you what was your relation to the moving picture, the cinema before? I mean, was it together? You were very much into cinema, and then as a musician, how was this how did you get into the soundtrack compositions?
Well, I had a classical training. So I went to music college and I knew I wanted to write music. I knew that from quite an early age, I think. But the idea that I would write for film came a little bit later but I love the idea of writing melody. And I think when I was at music college, the idea of writing for film was so appealing because you could write melodic music and I could write themes and I could write themes for characters and I could write big tunes or something gentle and lyrical. There were all these different opportunities that I could see within film would open the door to that sort of music. And I love writing for the concert hall. And when I was at college, I wrote a lot of music for the orchestra there and the choir and some chamber music and string quartets and all that sort of stuff, which I still love doing. But the idea of writing to picture really appealed. And so, yes, I remember going to the cinema when I was at college and seeing the film On Golden Pond. Do you remember that movie? And it has the most beautiful score by Dave Grusin. And it just starts with piano at the beginning. And it's so simple and so beautiful, and it really draws you into the film. And I remember sitting in the cinema thinking, wow, imagine being able to do that. Imagine being able to write music that is so descriptive and atmospheric and beautiful and melodic and draws you into a story. And I think that was a very important moment because I felt that's an amazing thing to do. Can you imagine being able to do that? And so I wanted to be able to find a way to do that, find a way to start writing music and maybe getting involved in film. And it started in television, and I wrote music for, lots of UK, British documentaries, and then moved into drama. And then my first movie was the movie Tom and Viv, which was about the music of the work, sorry, of T.S. Eliot. And the same director that directed from Tom and Viv then directed Wilde, which was a film about Oscar Wilde. And that movie opened many doors because Stephen Fry starred as Oscar Wilde and Jude Law starred as Bosie, and it was a wonderful film with a lot of music in it, and it opened a lot of doors. And after that, I was offered more things. I was offered more different things, and not only film but also other things. I did an album of music of Oscar Wilde's fairy stories, which I set to music, and lots of different things, which was so lovely to do and so inspiring.
Have you written to theater as well?
Yes, I have done some theatre music, particularly for the Chichester Festival Theatre, which is a fabulous theatre in the UK. So I have written some theatre scores, but not that many, maybe about 4 or 5. It's a very different thing, theatre, because it's live and you prepare the music in advance, and then it's recorded generally and it's played out across the performance. It's very different, but I enjoy the ones that I worked on. I think with film, it's a bigger process. There are more people involved. You've got an editor and a producers and directors and heads of department. It's a much bigger team. With theatre, quite often you're just dealing with the director, or maybe sometimes a sound designer, they call them in theatre. So it's a slightly smaller team. But it's very different, but equally it's good fun.
You wrote music for movies, for television, for theater, for kings, and you wrote movie for cruise ships. How was the experience with ships in your career?
With
You,
cruise ships?
yes.
You mean with Viking cruise ships? Oh my goodness. Well, I mean, it was it I am there's a radio station you probably are aware in the UK called Classic FM, and they play classical music every day and film music. It's very, very popular. And I've been Classic FM's composer in residence for about maybe 9 years. And that means that I get opportunities to write music for them, which I have been doing. I've done albums for them, like The Glorious Garden with Alan Titchmarsh and the musical Zodiac and the music of Kings and Queens, and albums for them. And one day they have a concert every year at the Albert Hall called Classic FM Live. And it's a fantastic concert with a huge orchestra. And I was able to conduct the orchestra at one of these concerts. And I think it was the musical Zodiac, and it was the premiere of the live performance of the musical Zodiac. And in the audience that night was one of their sponsors, Viking Cruises. And the vice president is Karina Hagen. And she made contact with me after the concert and said, "We really enjoyed your music, and we'd like you to write our music, our signature music. We haven't had a composer ever write music for us before, but we'd love to have a theme. Would you write a theme?" And it was the most exciting call. Then, as if that wasn't enough, they said, "And we'd like to invite you on our cruise ship to come and see what it's like being on a Viking cruise." And I went on a river cruise and an ocean cruise, all just for research, obviously. Not to, it was just research. And I went on the cruise and looked at the amazing scenery and the fantastic cruise ships, and it was so beautiful. And then I wrote the theme, and the theme's called The Traveller. And it had a solo violin, and the solo violin was my idea of the traveller on the cruise. It was my sort of musical depiction of the traveller. And the orchestra were the adventures that the traveller went on. And so it's about a 6-minute piece. You can get it, you can hear it on YouTube, you can get it on Viking.tv. Viking.tv is a channel that they set up during lockdown because they wanted their guests to be able to still explore the world, but from the comfort of their own home because they weren't able to travel. So Viking.tv has got the whole story behind the traveller on there. If you just go on there and just type in my name, you can watch the whole thing. There's concerts on there as well where we perform it live. It's an amazing streaming channel. So it's great for anyone that's interested in having a look. And we recorded it at Abbey Road Studios with a large 75-piece orchestra. And now you hear it on their advertising. And I'm still working with them, and we're hoping to put on another concert next year. So who knows? Maybe that will happen at Christmas. We're thinking about next year.
A very different work.
Wonderful. And of course, now we have for our most of the public of Musimagem are people that are involved with music and in cinema, and of course students. And so perhaps we can see all the successful music you've written to films and series, and I'm sure in this process many things can happen. Do you have a story of something that didn't go right and you had to drop, or how do you deal with that? This kind of for the process, or do you say no at a certain point? You say this is not working. Has it ever happened to you?
Oh yes, yeah, definitely it's happened. I mean, it happens to everybody. Nothing goes completely smoothly, as we know. And of course, music is a very personal thing. So what you like as a composer isn't always what your director will want. And many times they've said, I've come back, I've played something to a director and it hasn't gone as well as it went on Flood. And people have said, oh, I'm not sure that's completely right. One thing happened when I haven't done very many commercials, but writing music for advertising, again, is something when you're starting out, it can be very useful because it's quick, they work very fast. You only have to write maybe 30 seconds or a minute of music, and it can be good, to get your work out there. When I was writing music for a commercial for an orange drink called Mr. Crush, and it was an orange juice drink. And the idea was that the music should be sunny and bright and appealing and joyful. And so I wrote a piece, a 30-second piece, really, really short. And you have to get your message across, a bit like when you're writing a theme tune, you have to get your message across really quickly in a commercial because you've only got 30 seconds. So I wrote it really quickly and I got them, tried to make it as bright as I could. And then everybody came over to have a listen. The creative team, the producers, that everybody came over to have a listen. And I played it to them, and they were all silent after I played it. There was no comment at all from anyone. So I thought, this is there, nobody likes it. And then eventually one of the creative team had the courage to say, I don't think it's very orange enough. And so they couldn't describe what it was that they didn't like, but they could say that they didn't think it was orange enough. Now, when you say that to a composer, most composers probably, once they've stopped laughing and falling over, they will try and work out what it is that they mean. And I realized that they meant it wasn't bright enough. They didn't think it was bright enough or happy enough or joyful enough. This was a music that had to sell an orange drink, and it's something for children and families, and it had to be completely fabulous. So I went away and did another version of it and thought again and came up with something. And eventually, after many, many goes, they were happy with what it was that I came up with. But it took a long, long time to get there. And that's happened a few times on lots of different projects where my first go just hasn't worked out. Or, I mean, on Tom and Viv, my first feature film, I played the music to the director on the piano, Brian Gilbert, the director on piano, and a lot of what I played him, he just wasn't happy with the first time. So I had to rewrite a lot of that music. I think the thing is that to take it at its basic value, music is personal. You are never going to please everyone. Everybody's got their own favorite playlist. And not to take it personally, if you are just starting out and you are a student or you're working with a director, if they say to you, I don't like it, this is not for me, don't take it personally. It's not an assault on you. It's simply, it's not their kind of music. And try, if you can, and come up with something else and put the rest of what you've written in the bin without being too disappointed. If you can do that and learn how to do that, it's a good skill to have. It's not easy, but it's a good skill to learn.
Thank you. Great. João, do you want to do another question?
Yes. The next question that I will do isn't a question of a composer, isn't a question of an interviewer. It is a question of a fan.
Oh, Flab.
Flood.
Oh my gosh, Tom's Midnight Garden.
There are more, but this isn't time. I love your work for decades, for many, many years. And there are many soundtrack composers that are able to make an emotional music, action music for comedies, scenes. But for me, there are few composers that have the hairy skills to touch the center of the heart, to create a music that touch the more deep feelings of the persons. This is a personal view. And for me, there are few composers. I can mention Ennio Morricone or Riz Ortolani, the North American Randy Elderman, and you. Every music that you make, including the action music, the comedy music, for me, has the power to touch the emotion of the listening. I don't know technically was the reason. Maybe your attention for the characters. I don't know. And this is a good skill for a dramatic movie, uh, but appears in other kind of movies also. What do you think about this?
Well, I'm very, very happy that you that it touches you. Yeah, I'm very happy that you feel that way about my music. It's so much appreciated to hear because I think the power of music is to touch people and move them and make them feel a particular way. It's very powerful over images, and that's why directors are so keen to get the music right because you believe the music in a film. If the music is telling you love or romance or drama, even if the image is completely the opposite, you believe the music. The music is goes to your heart, it goes straight to your heart, and you believe what the music's telling you. And so it's powerful. It's a powerful force, and it's a powerful um it for to write music and to be able to deliver an emotion is a privilege. Now, I start whenever I write a piece. I don't think about necessarily if it's going to be the best melody or the best harmony or technically. I don't think technically about it. I only think about what mood and what character the music should have. And I like the music to tell a story in a simple, direct way. I don't necessarily make it complicated or unnecessarily complicated. I like it to have layers, but I don't necessarily make it complicated. So it's not about being clever or being, trying to be clever or trying to be modern or whatever. I just think about what the purpose of this music is. Now, you showed me Tom's Midnight Garden, and the purpose of
Beautiful.
that score was to be magical and playful at times. And I wanted it to have a good melody. I wanted it to have a theme. I wanted to follow Tom exploring the garden like a ballet dancer, which is what he's like when he explores the garden. And it had to have a theme that I could continue using throughout the film, something memorable. And it was the same with another movie that I did called Haunted. I don't know if you remember that film Haunted, which was a kind of mystery but a love story as well. It was the same thing with that, a theme that could be used in many different ways throughout the film. So it could start, I mean, in that film it starts on the piano and then it turns slightly more mysterious and it turns into a love theme at one point. So a theme that I can use in many different ways and explore it throughout the process of the composition. And when I write away from film, I also paint pictures in my mind. So when I was writing for the King's coronation, I was imagining the choir, Westminster Abbey, the occasion itself, the historic occasion, and be able to write something that had the right atmosphere and would create a moment, a memorable moment for the audience. And it's the same with a film. Create something that's memorable. So I'm always looking for a memorable theme, a memorable idea. It might just be a hook or a phrase or something. And if I can find it and it touches me or it makes me, I know when I've got something that I like and that I feel works. And I do throw away a lot of stuff. So it's not always the first idea. I've got piles and piles of manuscript paper upstairs of themes that have never been heard and probably will never be heard. And it's right that they should never be heard because they're not good enough. But I know when I get a theme that's right, that I like, I know when I've written something that I feel happy with and that I'm willing to share with whoever it is that I'm working with, either a producer or the producer of the album or whoever, Classic FM or whoever it is, I'm ready to share it. And sometimes it's very quick and sometimes it takes a long time. But I know when I've got something that I feel happy with. And when I'm happy with it, then I feel I'm ready to share it. And the fact that you're saying that it makes, if you feel something through the music, that is the most valuable and rewarding thing for a composer to hear. Just that somebody else likes it and feels it moves them in whatever way and they've enjoyed it, then for me, it's the best thing you could have said to me. I really like your music. It touches me. That is the most important thing and the best thing. So I already feel like you've made my day.
Yes.
Thank
There are one question, the Marcus question. Do you read, Natalia?
Yes, Marcos Souza, also director of Musimagem, is joining here with the question. He asks whether you know something about Brazilian music, if there is an influence on you, and what have you been listening to lately?
Well, I know a little bit about Brazilian music. I would love to know more. I'd love to find an opportunity to write something that could use those influences. It hasn't yet presented itself to me, but I'm really hoping it will one day because I love Brazilian music and I love the rhythms and the melodies and the structure and the harmonies. And it would be amazing to be able to use those influences in some way. So I will keep hoping that I get the opportunity. I don't listen to music. To answer the second part of your question, I don't listen to music very much when I'm writing myself. And the reason for that is that it influences or could possibly influence what it is that I'm writing. And I don't want to have any distractions. So when I'm writing for whatever it is, for a film or for a standalone piece of music, I have to be completely focused on that. And sometimes I get emails or people come to my website and say, please, can you listen to something? And I'd love to know if you think it's any good or it has some value. And I'd love to do it because I know it's helpful, but I can't. I just can't, because if I do it, it takes me off course. And I suppose it's a bit like if you're writing a novel, you don't want to be reading three other novels at the same time, three other books at the same time, because you'd have too many words in your brain, and you'd be thinking of other sentences and other storylines at the same time. You have to focus on your one mission, which is to write your book. And it's the same, I feel, with composing. I have to focus on my one mission at the time until it's accomplished. And that mission is to write whatever it is that I'm writing to the best of my ability and create the score as best as I possibly can in the time duration that I have available. And sometimes that's very short, or sometimes it's quite relaxed. So my mission is to do that. And so I don't listen to other music. If I did, I would be thrown off course and I don't feel I would do as good a job. I have to be in the zone. I have to write. I suppose even like an athlete or a tennis player, you have to concentrate on the job in hand when you're playing the game. And that's what I feel. I have to concentrate on the job in hand. And my job is to get that job done to the best of my ability. So I concentrate on that. And I don't have any other distractions. I don't really like listening to the radio or even in the car when we're driving, having anything on. I don't really even like that. When I go to a restaurant or if there's music playing or in a pub or whatever, or, a theater, I can't listen to other music. It's a shame, but the bonus is that I can write my own music without distraction.
Wow, this is really interesting what you say about that. I mean, you're always writing, right? You work a lot, so probably you're not listening too much of other music, but we have an amazing job coming from you, so we can listen to your music. That's great.
Yeah, I do. I'm writing a lot. My composition teacher used to say, write something every day, and then your composition juices will keep flowing, and you'll never run out of ideas. So I do write something usually every day, and it does work. It keeps it going. It keeps the music flowing. And sometimes that means when you don't have very much time, and you're short of time, and you only might have, 3 weeks to write a score. You've got the tools to do it. You can sit at the piano, and I find I can sit at the piano and not run out of ideas, because it may be that I have to throw things away and that I don't keep everything that I write, but at least I've got lots of ideas and I can get those down. But yeah, the downside is that I can't go to many concerts apart from ones where I'm contributing to, obviously. I don't listen to a lot of other music. I did when I was at music college. When I was studying, of course, I studied all the scores. I mean, part of the study was to learn scores, be able to read scores, look at orchestration of, Bruckner and Beethoven and Mahler and Wagner, and look at the amazing orchestrators and Ravel and people that were so influential um, to Western music, to all music, really. The history of that music was very important. So I did learn the orchestration techniques, and I studied orchestration with my composition teacher, and I listened to a lot of music in order to be able to break it down and understand how to write for a flute or for a violin or for a trumpet, whatever. And that's very important. But now, as I work professionally as a composer, I have to rely on my instincts, and I have to rely on what I've learned over the years and bring that into play and make sure that I do the best job with the knowledge that I've gained. Now, it's still learning. The whole thing about being a musician is it's that ever learning cycle of information, and you have to keep learning because the whole job is about learning to get better and learning. And I feel like on my next score, there may be something that I haven't done before. I might find that elusive magical tune that I've been looking for. I might create something that I haven't done before. And it's always just that little step away. So you have to keep learning, and you have to keep exploring ideas. But that's within you rather than listening to other people's compositions. It has to come from you, from your heart.
I will just translate a bit what you said, because our translator is drinking some water. Bom, eu vou resumir um pouco o que ela falou, né? Ela disse que realmente ela não ouve muitas músicas enquanto ela está compondo, para não sair do caminho, né, da composição. E que ela aprendeu isso com uma professora que dizia para ela escrever uma música todos os dias, escrever alguma coisa todos os dias. E então ela está sempre escrevendo, isso mantém o trabalho, mantém a fonte de ideias sempre renovadas. E ela disse que quando ela estava na faculdade, ela tinha que ouvir muitas coisas, tinha que pegar peças, né, para tocar e ouvir os outros compositores, e que o caminho da música é sempre de aprendizado, mas que hoje em dia, como ela trabalhando profissionalmente na composição, ela prefere não ouvir outras coisas para não ser influenciadas, o que é um ponto ruim para ela por um lado, né, que ela não ouve, mas que por outro lado funciona bem para ela dessa forma. Acho que resumidamente, I think I made a small resumed your explanation. We do have another question from Susana Rec Miranda, and she asks, she's particularly interested in your job as a teacher, the masterclass on film music, and she asks if there are still in the students there are still more men than women, and your perception of historical gender inequality, and what can be done to combat or at least to reduce the differences.
Well, actually, now when I have been doing the film scoring masterclasses at the Royal College of Music, I would say half and half now, women and men. It's equal pretty much. And of course, they're taken on merit, so like there is no gender issue in these music colleges anymore, if there ever was. And certainly not now, because it's all about your ability to do the job properly. I would say that it's not an issue anymore. Of course, there are more men working in the field, but that's historical, and we have to accept that there will be maybe more men directors, there's male directors working with us than male producers than women. Although even that now, I mean, on Father Brown, there's a female producer, lots of female editors. So it's very inclusive now. And I do feel that the situation has changed. It should never be an issue now. Whatever you want to do, whatever area you want to work in within the media, whether as a conductor, a composer, a musician, or anything else to do with the media, don't think of it as an issue. Just do your best work and it will shine through. And people will respect you for your work and forget about the fact that you're male, female. It's irrelevant. The important thing is doing your work well, never missing a deadline if you're a composer, and being professional and pleasant to work with. That's very important. Be able to collaborate, because working as a film composer, you're always collaborating. You're not working on your own. It's not just you and your keyboard and your piano, whatever. You do have to work with others. So it's about that balance. And all that plays into having a career that will be hopefully a long career, and people will want to come back and ask you to write their music again and again. And that's the key to it. And don't worry about, anything else. Everything else is a side issue. The important thing is do a great job and people will appreciate you for your work, which is what's important.
Yeah, thank you. I will translate that. Bem, a pergunta, então, é sobre o trabalho dela como professora, a masterclass que ela dá de música para cinema. E a pergunta da Suzana era se ela acha que ainda tem muitos mais estudantes homens, né? E qual é a percepção na desigualdade de gênero, né? Então ela diz que ela acha que hoje já está bem equilibrado, que ela não acredita que existe mais essa diferença, que sim, dentro do setor profissional acaba trabalhando existem ainda mais homens diretores e produtores, mas aqui até isso tem mudado. E que ela acha que o que importa mesmo é o seu trabalho, então que o foco tem que ser completamente nisso, né, no seu trabalho, em fazer o melhor possível, em ser uma pessoa colaborativa e também que seja prazeroso de trabalhar, né, em equipe. Ela diz que quando isso acontece, que isso vai impulsionar que você trabalhe mais vezes com essas pessoas, né, que tenham mais chamados para o trabalho, e que o foco absoluto é em fazer as pessoas gostarem do seu trabalho, usar o seu talento e só pensar nisso e não pensar em mais nada. Vai nisso que dá certo. I think that's it.
In fact, in Brazil, the situation isn't yet the best. There are few composers women. Only around 5% of the members of the association are women. One of them are here, Natalia. But the association, the Musimagem Brasil, have working to change this. For example, in the last concert of the festival, 1/3 of the musics were from women composers, including Padre Brown. The international guests in the online talks this year, 25% are women. The next talk will be com Pinar Toprak, that made the soundtrack for Captain Marvel. And yesterday there was a panel with 3 composers from International Alliance for Women Composers. But the reality needs to change.
Yeah, I think at least here we still find there are historical issues that keep women still behind, in the sense of there's a lot of I mean, the difficulties of just being an artist, just this is here is already very difficult, and then there is the on top of it, there is the still some gender situations that are very unpleasant when working in cinema and music. And I think all over the world you can find that. But I think at the same time, it's very, it's great to hear you, Debbie, when you say, just go for it and focus on the talent and focus on the work, because I think this is the mindset that we as women we must take on. So in order to make a change also.
Yeah, I think so. And I think if it is I'm sorry to hear that you struggle with it. I mean in the in the UK it's really not an issue now. And I hope that you feel that, it'll be that way for you very soon. And I do think the best way to attack it is just to almost ignore it, and not ignore it, but maybe that's the wrong word, but attack the issue full on, head on, and do the most brilliant work. And that can't be argued with. If you create something brilliant, hopefully it's beyond anyone saying you can't do this, because it speaks for itself. In the end, the music must speak for itself. I mean, when you listen to music for a film or for a television program, you don't see the composer anyway, so nobody has any idea whether they're male or female until they see the credit at the end. And most people don't read credits anyway, apart from people that are really interested in it like us. So it's completely irrelevant. It's totally irrelevant. I mean, I maybe once or twice I think somebody said to me, "Oh, we might want a woman to write this because it's going to be music that a woman might write better." I think they were trying to imagine that it was a female story and it needs a female composer. That's also ridiculous. It doesn't matter whether you're male or female. A female composer can't necessarily write music for a story about women any better than a man can. And a man can't write necessary story about a man any better than a woman can. The gender is irrelevant. What comes into play is your own imagination and how you use that imagination. And some women have amazing imaginations and create other things that are brilliant. And some men have amazing imaginations. Great. So it does, the subject matter or the job in hand just comes down to your ability and your ability to express whatever it is you wish to express musically. And you do that with your imagination and with your heart and soul. That's it. It's not about physicality. It's not about gender. It has nothing to do with it. We're not playing a sport where we need to be particularly strong, or we're not footballers or tennis players that are put into gender categories because of their ability to play and strength and all that sort of stuff, and muscle strength. It's not about that. It's purely imagination and creativity. And the creativity is at the heart of everything that a composer does, to be creative and to create music that has a purpose and works for whatever it is that it should be working for.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Debbie. This was a very inspiring conversation. I'm sure people, I mean, we are getting some messages also. People are really happy and thankful that you are here to talk to us. And it was an honor for me. Very nice to meet you. João, you want to say some final words?
Yes. Thanks, Debbie, for coming virtually to talk with us. This really was a very instructive, a very pleasant, a very wonderful conversation. Thank you, and in the future we will wait you in our festivals again.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me, and I hope to see you all in person one day very soon. And lots and lots of luck with the festival as well. And I hope you continue to enjoy the music as much as you are doing, because it's a wonderful thing to have people like you that love music and feel strongly and passionately enough about it to create a festival. So I'm just thrilled to have met you all.
Thank you for everybody that was watching, and please keep checking the festival. There are many other things to come. Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.